The clock is ticking towards the June 30th deadline, the self-imposed deadline by the Chiefs and the Royals as they try to figure out what their future is going to be in the Kansas City area. Now, this deadline is not motivated by anybody on the Missouri side of the state line. It is largely driven by the teams because June 30th is when the star bond offer expires, right? So they've got theoretically 6 days, if the state of Kansas holds the line here, to figure out whether or not they have any interest in continuing to play baseball and football on the Kansas side of the state line. Now, all that being said, yesterday, our colleague Kevin Keatsman did an outstanding job with the report that he had exclusively here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, sharing that there was some land that the Chiefs had control of on the Kansas side of the state line that they had extended their rights to back in March. Well, they extended that in March, thinking, okay, let's see what happens here over the next couple of months. But they basically let the options on that land expire. And I started making some calls yesterday to some of the folks that I have talked to across state lines on this issue. And Kevin's reporting was spot on. So I'm not here to confirm anything necessarily, but it gets to my broader point here of what else I'm hearing. So when it comes to the Royals, listen, they still really like Washington Square Park. They like that location next to Union Station, weaving it into Crown Center and everything else going on in that part of town, and they think it works. They think it makes sense. But they're still looking at the Kansas side. Where? Well, that Hesperia campus, the old Sprint Center campus, remains the top target for the Royals on the Kansas side. Not the top target overall, but the top target on the Kansas side that they're looking at and trying to figure out whether or not that location is one that they can actually build what they want to build with a stadium, get what they need to around the stadium, generate the revenues around the stadium that they insist they need to generate in order to, keep that payroll growing in a smaller market, and then also figure out the mess that would be putting a ballpark at basically 119th and Null. I believe it remains a terrible idea for reasons I've laid out for months on the show. I mean, if I was a homeowner anywhere on that 119th and Null, 119th and Antioch corridor between 435 and 119th Street, I would be screaming to my city councils, to my state lawmakers, saying this is the worst idea when it comes to our property and our real estate and our homes in this part of Kansas City. But at least thus far, no one's really looking for public input on this. And by the time they are, it might be too little too late. But that does remain a viable option for the Royals on the Kansas side of the state line. And, the Chiefs, they're still exploring Kansas. There are high-level meetings happening later this week on the Kansas side of the state line with the teams and the decision makers as to what exactly things on the Kansas side would look like, knowing full well that deadline is coming up on June 30th. Now, if I was sitting here this morning at 8:09 on a Tuesday and trying to predict whether or not there would be an extension on the star bond offer in Kansas, I would predict that the answer is yes. I hope it's no, to be totally honest, because I want these teams to be just kind of moving on and picking a side at this point and not kicking the can down the road any further. But obviously it behooves them for the star bond offer to be extended, because if the star bond offer expires on June 30th, coming up on Monday, and they don't have a location picked, well, they basically lose their leverage. They're basically, I don't want to use the word stuck, because I don't think they're stuck if they stay in Missouri, but they're basically in a position where they've got to stay in Missouri. The star bond offer then theoretically is off the table, right? So we'll see what comes out of these meetings later in the week with folks on the Kansas side and both of these teams. But they are up against the wire, and they've done it to themselves. This was their own self-imposed deadline, And we all knew why that deadline was in place, because that's when the star bond offer ended. It's not like these teams did this because they just wanted to be done by the July 4th holiday because they want to go on vacation and, enjoy themselves this summer for a little bit before football season picks back up and the All-Star break and everything else. No, it's because their leverage theoretically ends next Tuesday, July 1st. So that's why this deadline has long been in place. But, we'll have to see what exactly happens from here on out when it comes to these two teams and what exactly their futures look like. But Kansas still is in the mix as far as I can tell. And the other problem that Kevin did allude to, rightfully so yesterday, is especially for the Royals, they don't know what passing a vote would look like in Missouri. Can they get a vote through in Clay County, right? Is that something that is feasible if they go up to North Kansas City, which is a attractive location there at the old bowling alley owned by the Merrimans? But if they need a local component, and the state law suggests they do, what does that look like? In Jackson County, can they do a direct deal with Kansas City that doesn't include the taxpayer going to the ballot box and get something done that way? Can the city, take some of those sales tax monies from rental cars and things like that go to T-Mobile down the line and move them into a Royals ballpark? I don't know. I mean, also, you got to upkeep T-Mobile. Let's not forget about that. So where's that money suddenly coming from? There's a lot of questions there. But I don't think the Royals like their odds of going to the ballot with anybody right now on the Missouri side. So that's where Kansas is attractive, because theoretically they don't have to do that. I'm not saying it's right, but they don't have to, right? So we're down to the wire here, and it is going to be fascinating to see how it plays out over the next few days. Now, speaking of these two teams, specifically the Kansas City Chiefs, I posted this last night on social media, and it got a lot of traction. So I said, we got to share this morning on the show, because I don't know why it came to my mind as I was preparing for the show this morning. But I thought to myself, thinking ahead, if the Chiefs do not have the B-2 stealth bombers from Whiteman flying over Arrowhead for the home opener against the Eagles, somebody is not doing their job in Kansas City.
Well, I was going to say that yesterday. That would be the biggest cheer of the year when they do it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll assume they will do it. They have done it.
They have done it, obviously, many times.
Yeah.
And it's obviously an incredible scene. And it made me think this, too, and this might be too hot of a take for some of you. But I never want the Chiefs to be in a dome. I
thought that yesterday,
I don't.
too.
I don't have any interest in a dome.
We're right here by Whiteman. We'll do this anyway. We're Mid-America. So even if yesterday's event or the events over the weekend didn't happen, we still celebrate that here. And it would be a shame to lose that.
I agree, man. I mean, yeah, it gets tough weather-wise sometimes, right? You think about that Dolphins game a few years ago. But for every one of those, to lose the flyovers at Chiefs games.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you look towards the rafters.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. You could still do it and put it on some big screen. But let's be honest, you are not going to get the chills of the B-2 bombers flying over an open Arrowhead Stadium that you're going to get being like, oh, there it is on the big screen inside my domed stadium.
Hearing them 5 seconds after they've gone by that whole thing.
I know that that's not something that probably business owners care about when you're thinking about whether or not you're going to build a dome stadium. I realize this will not be part of the decision-making for the Chiefs. They've got, billions of reasons to potentially build a dome stadium. I'm just saying, as a regular guy and a fan who likes to go to games and loves the flyover and what it brings, and yeah, I don't love the cold weather. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'll take the trade-off. Okay, I'll take the trade-off of having the flyovers and dealing with the occasional really cold game in the playoffs for what you get, the enthusiasm, the energy, the patriotic mentality that you get sitting there with 80,000 fans as those B-2 bombers or those fighter jets are flying over Arrowhead Stadium. And if I'm in the minority on this, that's fine. I don't care. Call me whatever you want. But that's how I'm feeling this morning after the weekend events, John.
We could have the only stadium with the sun porch. That'd be cool. No, I think the canopies thing, like Buffalo's doing, might be something where we could have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an option. And, if we want to go that route, Chiefs want to invest in that with their newfound money, so be it.
Or they could just all let us bring umbrellas.
That's fine, too. Just keep me out of the dome. No thanks.